Great. Well, hello everyone, and thank you all so much for joining us for our second UQ Women in Engineering Challenging Yourself Professional Development workshop. Thanks everyone for joining us today, especially via this new Zoom platform. So we appreciate everyone's time. First of all, my name is Karen Joe, and I'm going to be your facilitator today. I'm a member of the UQ Women in Engineering Alumni Ambassador Council, and I'm also a very fresh UQ alumnus of 2019, and I'm currently a graduate process engineer at a company called APA Group. Just before we get started, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands on which we meet. On behalf of the University of Queensland, we pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. We recognise their valuable contributions to Australian and global society. So, just on to the next slide, a quick overview of our awesome WEAC Ambassador Council. For those of you who are joining us for the first time today, welcome. It's lovely to meet you all. I'd just like to briefly share some information about our council. The council is made up of a passionate team of UQ alumni from many different engineering backgrounds. So we've got our pictures up there, as you can see. We've got Candice Lamb, our chair, Mushfiq Rahman, our vice chair, Trang Pham, Jennifer Ross, Kate Heliotis, who is also here with us today as a co-facilitator. She will be our lovely Q&A facilitator as well. We've got Rick Murphy and also myself. And as a council, we work in partnership with UQ to develop engagement activities for our fellow alumni around the world, and especially around Queensland. We aim to foster a really strong sense of just UQ community and support amongst all our engineering graduates and industry colleagues, both male and female. We all genuinely, truly love what we do, and we enjoy having this opportunity to collaborate with our university and to contribute, supporting a very important change across our industry. So today's workshop session is going to be with Dr. Kim Ball, who I'm very pleased to have facilitating a workshop and sharing a huge wealth of knowledge. This is the second online workshop in a series of 3 really interactive workshops, and it's led by industry professionals and academic facilitators, just like Dr. Ball. So the series aim to empower, enlighten, and emphasize the potential of your individuality and also help progress your career development. And just before we launch into the workshop with Dr. Ball, just have to share some general housekeeping, as I'm sure everyone has seen in all the webinars that we've been going to recently. Just letting you know that today's session is being recorded. You've most likely joined automatically muted and with the video off. And this is mostly just to help us manage just a larger number of people participating and to help preserve the bandwidth, because I definitely know my Wi-Fi struggles sometimes during the day. If you could just please keep your microphone on mute and your camera disabled throughout the session, that would be great. If you have any questions throughout the duration of the workshop, you can feel free to send a message to the Q&A facilitator, and we will relay your questions to Kim and hopefully get as many answered as we possibly can. We've also allocated just some additional time at the end of the session for Kim to answer some more of your questions. And if you are having any technical problems, feel free to click on the chat icon, which can be found at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and just let us know. And we'll do our best in the background to quietly, hopefully, help you all out and get your connectivity sorted. And now, the most exciting part, I'd like to introduce our presenter for today, Dr. Kim Ball, who will be talking about the project team selection process, understanding how it works, and developing networking relationships for your professional development and career success. So Dr. Ball's focus is equity, diversity, and inclusion for women in STEM professions. After completing a Bachelor of Business, majors in Management and Human Resources Management in 2009, and a Bachelor of Human Resource Management with first class honours, might I add, in 2011, she undertook and was awarded her PhD in 2017. So definitely not a short list of amazing accomplishments. In her PhD, Dr. Ball conducted an ethnographic and social network analysis study in the professional services sector, specifically around project-based organisations to identify inequalities for women attaining interesting and challenging work assignments. Dr. Ball has presented her research at a number of domestic and international academic and STEM conferences. So very excited to have Dr. Ball here with us. And she's also contributed to Engineers Australia Diversity and Inclusion Policy Development, and also the roundtable discussions on women leadership and family-friendly practices hosted by Diversity City Careers. As a critical researcher and consultant, Dr. Ball provides practical recommendations for organisations and individuals to improve women's retention and career experiences. So this workshop is definitely in her field of knowledge, and we can't wait to hear it. And I'll just now hand it over to you, Dr. Ball, and I'll stop sharing my screen. And that's all yours.
Well, thank you so much, Kate and Kyle and Karen, for setting this up today and giving me the opportunity to speak with you all. As researchers, we always love to talk about our work, but more importantly, my aim is to help make engineers, and particularly those who are women, have a better experience of their careers and their work. So with that in mind, as Karen explained, my research is based on an ethnography which I conducted. So I spent 8 months working alongside engineers and drafters and designers who were members of 6 resourcing teams. They were based in their Brisbane office of an internationally operating project-based organisation within the professional services sector. So I had a lot of time to talk with them and gain an understanding of what they were experiencing, and in particular the inequalities that women experienced. And my particularly favourite topic is networking. So I had an opportunity also to do an online network analysis of the 16 people who were in the Brisbane office. So I had a lot of data and a lot of knowledge to present today, but hopefully I can keep it in time and we'll get there. Now, as I said, my research is based, it focuses on women's experiences and what we can do to improve women's experiences. But there are lots of takeaways here for men also. So Kyle, would you be able to launch the first poll, please, so that I can have an idea on the makeup of my audience today? So Kyle's just going to launch the question. Thank you. So I can see how many of each gender and what we look like today. So while you're thinking about that, today I'm going to be talking about how we can improve your chances of selection in project teams. And the focus today is going to be on the team member selection process, your role, the importance of networks, and how to develop the right networks. Okay.
All right, Kim, I'm just going to stop that.
Yep.
So we've got 91% are female and 9% male.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. That's wonderful to see. Okay. I'm going to be starting a presentation now, the slideshow. So hopefully everything works. Can everybody see the PowerPoint now? Yeah. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about, I'll give you the background, so what the problem is and a bit on the research. I'm going to talk about the project team assignment process. So two factors in that we're going to be concentrating on. For you to identify how your project team selection process operates in your organisation, and then also to identify who has the power and influence in that process. Then I'm going to talk a bit about you and how you can be prepared. You've got to know what your competencies are, what you want from your career. So we'll go through that. Then the next stage we'll go into being visible. This is important because I found, and a number of other studies have found, that women tend to be invisible as skilled and professional workers. So it's important for you to improve your visibility. To do that, we're going to be talking about having regular conversations with your manager, not underestimating your skills and experience, developing connections to make yourself visible, being enthusiastic and using your initiative, finding a champion to help you through all this, and being considerate as you develop those network connections, and finally, being kind to yourself. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I've got to manage two screens that are on different there we go. Okay. So what we're talking about here is it's really important. This is a quote from one of my participants. It's really important for people's careers that they get exposed to different clients, different projects, different people. And this is from a very experienced engineer of 16 years. But there's the cold, hard truth of a life as an engineer in a project-based organisation. This is from Nancy, who was, this is from Cody, who was a resourcing team manager and 14 years experience. He said, if you're competent in something, you keep getting put into that position rather than in a position that you would be able to build on and grow into, because managers will say, we've got this much money, we've got to deliver this much work. Now, we think about this person can deliver it in 36 hours, but this person's a little more junior and they'll take about 60 hours. So rather than say, well, then the person who can do it in 36 hours, let's bump them up a little bit and give them a responsible role to give them some experience and bring that new person along so they can figure out how to start delivering on time. This rarely happens, and it never happens, he says. In his experience, it never happens out of people proactively looking to give them an opportunity. It comes out of the need and the unavailability of others. That's the way people tend to grow in this profession, which means it's very poor from perspective. So this is the base that you're starting from, particularly if you're in a professional services sector where time is money and the objective of your organisation is to bring in as much profit for the shareholders as they can. Okay. Sorry, I'll talk a little bit about the problem before we go on. The problem is that in Australia, according to the last census, about 11.2% of professional engineers are women. In the professional services sector, there's about 12.7% who are women. The low rate of women in engineering is also exacerbated by their attrition rate. Women tend to leave the profession at a rate that's 38.8% faster than their male colleagues. This impacts on diversity of thought, infrastructure development, the economy, but more importantly, it impacts on women as individuals. It impacts on their careers, their lifetime savings, and their financial security. So keeping as many women in engineering is important for all of us. The major reason that women and engineers tend to leave their organisations and even the profession is a lack of interesting and challenging work. Now, my research investigated what challenging and interesting work meant to engineers, and that I came up with around 20 different themes. But what I found was that basically every engineer loves to learn and develop. In fact, their career depends on that constant development. So we could spend another whole session on interesting and challenging work, but it's enough for you to know that it's important for your learning and development, which I'm sure I'm talking to you. You know what's important for you. Okay, so what I want you to think about is, how do you think the process for selecting for as team members in your organisation works. In the organisation where I did my research, as you can see on this slide, from all of the interactions that I had with the engineers, I attended meetings, I had discussions, I conducted interviews, I gleaned how this process worked, and then I talked with managers and confirmed that that was the state. Okay, so what I did find was that in a project-based organisation, the source of interesting and challenging work is through project teams. And to be a member of a project team, I saw that all of these factors came into play. Engineers needed to undertake their performance and career review dialogues with their team leaders, and that could be yearly. Usually it was yearly. They're required to identify and communicate their career goals and their training and development needs to their resourcing team leader or team manager. They have to have capacity, which means you have to have availability, you have to have the capabilities, which is the relevant skill set, plus you have to have the required experience level that relates to the sort of project that you're working on. Then I discovered the roles that were involved in making this decision. Now, formerly people talked about talking to their team leader, and then they talked about, well, the section manager has a role, but also there's a the client managers also have a role. So we worked out that the resourcing team manager, which was the immediate manager, they were the first person on the rung, the first person you had contact with and you were required to talk to. So their job was to formulate people resourcing details, which included the team member's skill sets, their availability, their experience, their career needs, their career goals, their reliability, their charge out rates, their work speed, and their training and development needs. And they're the ones who conduct the performance reviews and career dialogues. They determine each team member's capacity. They advise the section manager on these capacities, and then they consider the objectives and targets of the organisation in every one of their decisions. Then they talk with the section manager, who communicates with the team leaders to identify possible people, resources with the capacity and capability that's suitable for the project that's in mind. They consider the career needs of individuals, as well as the organisational and project requirements. They advise the client manager of these and who would fit the project. Then the client manager in this formal process was supposed to be the one who made the final decision. They selected and assigned the people resources for a proposal. So those are the roles involved in making each team member's selection. I'm just wondering, Kyle, would you be able to launch the next question? I believe it's the one on where people work, so that we have an idea on who is actually working in a project-based organisation, perhaps in the professional services sector, and who's in the public sector, who also might have fluid teams, or public sector who work in fixed teams or another sort of structure. So thank you, Kyle, for that.
Yeah, I've just launched that now, Kim.
Great.
I'll just give people 30 seconds.
That's fantastic. Okay, so it looks at the moment, okay, most of you are working in professional services sector. That's fantastic idea. Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. Cool. So everybody's got an idea. We've got 47% in professional services sector project-based teams, 6% in public sector project-based teams, 22 in fixed teams in public, and 25% in other, which I'd be interested in looking at one day. Thank you very much, everyone, for that. Okay. Now, as I went through, people asking them, you know, okay, how does it work in the organisation? What are we doing, who's involved, who has the power and influence. There were a lot of uncertainty about how it actually worked. And there was a lot of uncertainty about what the formal process really was. So I'll let you have a look. Oh, I got to get back to that slide. Sorry, guys. There we go. So who actually makes a decision? Well, Nancy, who is a project manager and an engineer, said, okay, I'd go to my team manager because that's the official line we're supposed to take. I think your team manager and project director, or your project manager, because they know your skills and strengths. But most important is, I think, I'm not quite sure in our team who actually decides at this stage who actually gets a project. I seem to think it's a team manager, but sometimes I think maybe not. There's some other powers out there. I'm not quite sure because our team's a bit dynamic that way. There's no clear-cut line that the section manager makes a decision and the team manager follows. So that was representative of what people were thinking. There was no clear-cut line. I'm just going to check now to make sure that I stay on task here because I can tend to wander a little bit. It gets exciting. Okay. Despite their uncertainty, there was a level of agreement that the policy line must be followed, that you must talk to your team manager first before you talk to anyone else. One very experienced engineer, he was 35 years an engineer, said to me, I think if you sidestepped the team manager and went straight to someone like the section manager, then you'd be looked at as a cancer. So you have to go through the process. So there was agreement on that. So I'd like you to take a bit of time, just a minute, have a think through how it works in your organisation. Is there a set policy? Is it followed? Or do you think other people have some influence in the process? Kyle, could you launch poll question 3, please? And we'll see what people think about this. So do you think it follows the official formal line? Or do you think there are other factors at play? Whoa. Yeah, okay. Okay. 79% at the moment, 77% are thinking that other factors are at play. So 30 people out of 41 have voted. 31. Still up to 78% of people think that something else is happening. Okay. Well, that's looking interesting. So from my observations and attendance of meetings, I found that what was really happening and who identified and played a role in the process of influencing the decisions that were made. Managers talked about engineers expecting them to be enthusiastic and to self-nominate for projects. They perceived that the individuals had the power in the process. It was up to them whether they were assigned to projects or not. So for example, I think individuals definitely have the power, claimed a senior engineer and a project director. He went on to say, if I have someone who comes up to me and says, I definitely want to work on that, that goes a long way because you really want the initiative to come out. And a group of people were talking. They decided that the individual should drive this situation. That was from a senior engineer. Promote themselves from a section manager. Go back to their team leader and say, oh, that sounds interesting. Can you tell me more? That was from a senior engineer. They want you to put your hand up, and more often than not, the opportunity will be provided to you. That was from a senior engineer. For a section manager, the engineers who wanted project experience needed to be self-driven. They needed to not expect others to push or nominate them for a place on a team. He said to me, it's down to yourself to apply for those things. It's more down to the individual, how much you promote yourself and put yourself into those positions. So they also talked about their perceptions of engineers' skills and experience compared with the engineers' perceptions of their skills and experiences, or how they lacked a skill that was needed for the project. And then they also talked about the cost and the profit margin and how that played a big role in who was selected. The engineers talked about a couple of people always being selected for projects. They were close friends, cycling mates, and previous work colleagues of team managers and section managers and client managers. They had talked about having a good connection with one of those managers was always helpful. And if you were in the cliquey shareholder group, that was good too. Friendships were important. I'll close that down. Friendships are important, especially for men, because that's where they heard about what was happening in the business, what projects were coming up. So it comes down to who knows whom is important. They got great advice from senior and very successful women, which was, let me see, she talked about telling everybody and anybody. So what we're going to do now is look at the factors that I actually determined played a role in team member selection. So we talked about, first of all, let's look at the individual. The individual had to have a knowledge of themselves, what they found was interesting and challenging, skills and abilities, their career and professional goals, their training and development needs to achieve those goals. They had to have availability. You've got no control over that. You have to possess the relative skill set. And that for your team manager to accept your perception of that skill set. You had to possess the relative career engineering experience for that project. You had to be visible. You had to display enthusiasm and use your initiative. You had to develop those network connections with the powerful people, being the team managers or the section managers or the client managers, non-shareholder managers, project proposal directors, design and project managers. You had to then communicate and your career goals and your developmental goals with these powerful people. Yeah, and you did that firstly through your team leader, have those discussions. You had to find out about an opportunity. You can't nominate yourself for a role if you don't know what's coming up, if you don't know what jobs are in the pipeline. And to do that, you have to have connections with the people who have knowledge about what those coming up projects are. And we'll look at, okay, the roles we've talked about already, who've been determined to have some power and influence in that process. And I don't think you'll be shocked to hear that though it's a male-dominated group. And again, a lot of them were described as being very cliquey and having friendships based around certain interests outside of work. And at the bottom, you'll see the individual also was powerful through their ability to self-nominate, okay, as we talked about previously. Okay, so now we're into what you can do to prepare yourself for this. You've got to be prepared. This is a very important for you to have those discussions, firstly with your team manager and then with the powerful and influential people. You have to have the knowledge of yourself. What are your career and professional goals? What do you want from your career? Do you want to be a technical specialist, a generalist? Do you want to be CEO? Do you want to be manager? Okay, you need a mentor who can help you with that. Could be a senior engineer with whom you have rapport. It could be your organisational mentor. What work is interesting and challenging for you? What sort of projects do you want to work on or need to work on to achieve your career goals? What floats your boat? I used to ask the engineers, and you'd see their eyes light up as they describe to me the sort of projects that they like to work on, the sort of things that they like to do. And again, what women are nominated as challenging and interesting work was different to what men nominated. What technical specialists nominated was different to what generalists nominated. So it's not one box fits all. Not all engineers just love to solve problems. Okay, we're driven by different things. Everyone's an individual. We need to consider that. You need to consider that. Think about what skills you have. What skills do you need? What work do you need to build on those skills and experience to achieve those career and professional goals? Think about what you bring to a project. Could be enthusiasm, dedication, desire to learn, skills, the type of problems that you're good at solving, and connections to technical specialists. What you need to do is write a list down. If you work well on a spreadsheet like I do, build up different columns. Think about what you have now, what you need to develop. Okay. Let me see. Yes, I have a quote here. So the attributes recommended came from one of the senior engineers. He talked about if you're a young engineer and you're really keen to work on a job, to learn the ropes, I don't think you can just sit around and sort of hope that you'll get picked one day. I think you've got to demonstrate certain attributes that get picked up by various people. Are you dedicated? Are you enthusiastic? Are you willing to learn? I've met lots and lots of young graduates and trainees, and the attribute that I sort of rank the highest is, well, they don't have to be super intelligent. The thing that excites me about people is their willingness to learn. So have a think about the sort of things that are your best attributes, what you want to learn, okay? Let's go to the next slide. We'll talk about one of the other important things that you have to do for yourself. You're in charge of your own development in this project-based organisation situation. So you've got to have regular conversations with your immediate manager. So this relates to factor G back in the model. Everything about what you've prepared, okay? The type of work you're interested in, your professional development needs, the work and opportunities that you need and that you're interested in and to be engaged in. What work will give you exposure to those powerful and influential people? You need to be visible to them. Make sure that your team manager keeps you in mind, okay? Have those little side conversations with them every now and again. You don't have to be annoying. You don't have to be persistent, but usually the loudest bird gets the worm. Yeah, I don't know. But make sure they keep you in mind. But the advice is always follow the formal process, but have these discussions with your team manager. Don't underestimate your skills and experience, okay? It's common knowledge within the literature, and I found also in the research, that women tend to understate their skills and experience, whereas men have no problem overstating them. One man told me he talked himself into a position in a project. He said, I could barely keep my head above water. I was swimming furiously underneath, just trying to keep up, but I did it in the end. Now, a woman doesn't tend to put themselves in that sort of position, but don't understate your skills. Don't underestimate them, okay? Remember that your skills and experience are subjective. Managers have a different perception. Now, let me go to one of the quotes. Oh, I've lost the quotes because of, here we go. Here it is. Sorry, I've got it. I've had times when somebody's been really, I want this opportunity. I should be doing that role. I can do that role. And we've sat back and we've gone, actually, you can't. If I ask you to do that, it's going to be a stretch. And my gut feeling is that you won't and you'll fail. And that's not going to be helpful. I've actually told them that. It wasn't terribly well received, he said, but we've said, okay, we'll be looking for the right opportunity. Okay, so you're not always going to agree on what your skills and experience levels are, but you have to have those discussions. I'm going to have to hurry along here. Okay, down to connections with people. When I asked people who had they worked with in the last 3 months, men, even though there were 30% women in the building, 70% men only nominated 18% of women. I'd seen them working with women. I knew who was in their resource teams and their project teams, and they just didn't nominate them. Career advice, men nominated 12% of their career advice connections as women. Technical advice, only 10% of men's technical advice came from women. They were virtually invisible as experienced and skilled professionals. But friendship advice came up. Men had a higher, 19% of their friendship was with women, but women had 61% of their friendship with other women. And that's because men and women got different things from their friendship groups. So think about who you can go to. Women, I'm conscious of the time, women get different benefits from their technical advice, their career advice, their co-work and their friendship networks. Needless to say, men get opportunities for hearing about what's happening in their work. Women get a sense of being able to share the pain that they're going through and experiencing through the office politics. Another day we can go through this because there's a lot more information here that can help, but just gives you a bit of a background. Okay, so you've got to develop connections and make yourself visible. And that relates to factors D, F, G, and H in the model. Get to know project team members, their skills and their specialties. If they might have technical specialties that you can rely on later, because technical advice networks were very important to the engineers I spoke with. Get to know the clients on your projects. Clients tend to request engineers that they've already had worked on with projects because they know them. If they don't see you, if they don't know you, then they're not going to be able to recognise you when you come up as a possible member. Now, let me see. The importance about clients comes from one of the senior engineers I spoke with. I need to get in front of these clients. Next time we put in a proposal with those guys, they're not going to know who I am. So I'd be putting pressure on them. If there was an undue resistance, then I'd probably elevate it to an internal management and say, look, this is hindering my career development. It's a combination of the project managers and the people they like, the client managers and internal managers. And you've got to be quite assertive. Less assertive people, they sort of sit there and say, oh, I'm not developing, I'm leaving, and they leave. So if you're more of a shy person, not assertive, and you don't feel confident to raise that with your manager, then that can be a hindrance. So develop connections with the powerful and influential people. Get to know colleagues from different sections, because they might be have opportunities for you to work with them on projects that are not within your field, but you might have the expertise that they're looking for. You don't know unless you go out and talk with them. Have a chat with someone in the lift on the way up in the morning. If you've got an internal staircase, have a chat with them there. In the kitchen, what are you doing? You know, what sort of work are you working on? That sounds interesting. I'd be interested in that project. Kyle, could you please launch the next poll? I'm going to ask you all whether your workplace is actually conducive to talking to other people. And so Kyle will do that, and we will continue talking about other ways that you can develop your connections.
Is that the cycling one, Kim?
No, it's question 5.
Sorry, yeah.
That's
oh, yeah,
okay.
Here we go.
Got it? Thank you. Okay, so if you can answer that while we're talking about these. So develop connections with the powerful and influential people. They'll help you, let me move this one over to here. They'll help you hear about future projects, and you've got to be visible to them. They're not going to pick you if you're not visible. Talk about the type of work you're interested in with all these people. You could become a panel member with your professional association. A number of the engineers I spoke with said they got a lot of opportunities and heard about projects through those sort of interactions. Think about taking up cycling. Be courageous, confident, creative, and positive. Okay, so it looks as though many people have the opportunity to talk with other people in their buildings. If you don't, you have to be creative about finding those opportunities. Okay, I will close that one now. I am conscious of the time. Okay. Before we start into this, Kyle, could you please launch the next question about the cycling? Thank you. Do you like cycling? Okay, you're going to be thinking why. Okay, remember we talked about the friendship networks. Well, the friendship networks, a lot of them were based on cycling, particularly the friendships with the powerful people, the client managers, the shareholders, the team managers, the section managers. And cycling has become the new golf. So if you are into cycling, or if you could get used to it, you might find that it could be beneficial to you hearing about and getting connections with those people who can help you with your career. So 45% of you said, no, you're not into cycling. Me either. But for those of you who are, you can take that opportunity, okay? Thank you for answering that. So remember, the senior managers talked about, we want people to put their hands up and say, I want this job, okay? So you've got to use your initiative, be enthusiastic, listen for opportunities. Remember, you have the power through your self-nomination, and it's expected. You're being judged by the powerful and influential people. They say, you know, oh, so-and-so isn't using their initiative. I was really disappointed that they didn't put their hand up in that meeting and say, I want this opportunity. Put your hand up and say, I'd really like to work on that project. Don't sit back and think, oh, they'll pick me. Somebody will pick me. You know, no, they won't. You've got to be the driver, okay? And depending upon the scale of the project, a senior engineer and shareholder recommended that engineers needed to be known to be keen by your team manager, by your section manager, by your business centre manager, and even your regional manager to be considered for opportunities in project teams. Okay. Be considerate though, okay? Don't be persistent or annoying. Just keep the connection open. Have a little message, drop by and say, how are things going? What's happening at the moment? Anything on the horizon? Okay, it might just be as you're passing in the hallway or on the stairs. And remember, in networking, it's a sharing of resources. What can you offer them? Always have in mind what you can offer someone else if they're going to be helping you, okay? It's a sharing of resources. Find a champion, okay? It might be your manager. It might be a project manager or someone senior you've had a relationship with, that they've helped you along the way and you've asked them questions. One of the women in my group said, you know, she's got the man who sits next to her, he's a senior project manager. He sort of pulls her along into projects. He thinks, Erin, you know, this person is here. She's interested in that. So find a champion. It could be a mentor within the organisation, someone who can pull you along into the pipeline. They can be your into the powerful group. Okay, they might have a connection to that powerful network. They might be able to point you into the direction of new projects. They can be a sounding board too. You know, get a realistic view of what your skills and experiences are. And sometimes we can have a view of ourselves that might not be as realistic as someone else can help us work out they are. And as I said, they can pull you into projects. But most of all, be kind to yourself, okay? I don't know about you, but I'm an introvert. And as I was talking with Kyle earlier, the older I get, the more introvert I am. So doing all this can be absolutely exhausting. You want to sit in the ball in the corner at the end of the day and just rock yourself to sleep, yeah? It can be hard. And you're putting yourself out there. So you're taking a lot of personal risk. But I found, and the people that I spoke with found, that it's really worthwhile. Do it to the level that you can do it to. Give yourself time to recharge. Congratulate yourself on the effort, any effort. If you turn to someone in the lift and say, hi, I work in this, what do you do? That's a big effort. Congratulate yourself. And think of some other ways to reward yourself for being an active participant in your own professional development. It's all in your hands. So basically, that's what we're talking about. Oh, I wanted to go back. Let me see. Remember, if you really want to roll, you have to step up and be loud and proud and say, I want this. You have to go into bat for yourself. And this was from a very experienced senior woman who was very successful. Well, that's all I wanted to talk with you about today. I hope that helped you. And there's still a few minutes left. Oh my gosh, I did it.
Well done. You did really well. Thank you.
Thanks,
for
Kim.
that wonderful presentation. While you were talking about self-nomination and team assignment and trying to work out your place in that realm, we had some comments come through on the chat, which I think provide great insight. The first one was from Nina. And Nina, if you'd like, I invite you to unmute yourself and go into this a little bit further if you like. But Nina said that the flip side of the coin is actually the powerful individuals having a duty to engage with the people who don't have these skills yet, but, you know, demonstrate potential, finding the diamonds in the rough, so to speak. So what would you be able to provide some insight perhaps for the managers in the room who are in this position and looking for that talent that's hidden and helping them come out of their shell?
I have actually in my research produced recommendations for organisations and managers and for the individuals. And so for this presentation, I concentrated on the individuals. I have recommended that organisations make the process more transparent, that they give people opportunities to talk with the managers, the people who make the decisions. And that managers also do need to, as you say, find those diamonds in the rough. Unfortunately, in professional services sector though, it's always going to come back to how much is this going to cost us, okay? What impact does it have on our bottom line? And you'll find that some organisations are a lot more open to giving less experienced engineers an opportunity. But to do that, you as an engineer still have to be there talking with them and saying, this is what I need. So my recommendation, if you are a manager, is listen to your junior engineers and your colleagues and ask them, what can you do to help? Be a champion for them. So we can do this another time when I talk about what organisations can do, but I hope that sort of answers your question.
Definitely. And just while we're talking questions, if there's anyone else participating in today's session who would like to ask a question, please feel free to send it through to the chat or unmute yourself and join in the conversation with Kim directly. Julie also mentioned something which we're all struggling with a little bit at the moment, and that is with COVID-19 bringing us back to, working from home and those kind of environments, we're experiencing less opportunities to have those chance meetings and those social conversations that might not otherwise happen. So do you have any tips for stimulating some engagement with your colleagues to kind of foster that same experience, but while we're in a bit more of a virtual environment?
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of opportunity to think about this, but take advantage if you're on LinkedIn, or if you have I know the organisation that I work with had an internal chat mechanism within their communications. Perhaps you can set up a team, just get together every now and again, not to discuss work, but to just catch up and to make sure that everyone's okay. And in that process, check that, has anybody heard about what's happening? Have you got some more information? Because some of those team members, they will be better connected than you, I would say, depending upon, whether they cycle or not. Yeah, I agree that it's challenging, and I think a lot of people are meeting virtually for their team meetings at the moment. So, take opportunities though to check in with people. How are they going? And put your hand up and say, look, I'm struggling at the moment to get this experience. Does anyone have any ideas? Use those champions within your team.
Yeah, speaking from experience, the team that I'm in has actually created a virtual morning tea, which, it has been a wonderful way to engage with people that I don't normally work with directly. Yeah. And through that morning tea, there's usually a different theme, but there's a fun activity. We're broken up into smaller groups. Yeah. We're able to catch up with people like we would at the water cooler. And so that's been a really lovely experience, having that, though it's not always something that people are, willing to dive into. It's a bit strange. It's not. I
know. Yeah.
It is about embracing the unknown at the moment.
Yeah, it is. I think we just have to make the best of what we've got and be creative. Right.
That's right. Yeah.
Use your initiative and show your enthusiasm, even though you might be stuck behind a screen.
That's right. And it really has shown us how important human connection is.
Indeed.
Whether introverted or extroverted, but just having those conversations is actually exposing you to what's going on and helping you think through your own thoughts and set your own goals and tasks.
Yep, I agree. And with your goals and tasks, keep that spreadsheet, keep it updated every time you do a project, every time you have some work on, really think about critically what you've gained and what you need. So, maybe start a chat around that. Has anybody got any creative ideas about, what we can do to improve our skills?
Definitely. I have a question from Alana. She asked, regarding the graphs of referrals.
Yes.
How many people was this graph based on?
Oh, the referral. You're talking about the different networks. That was based on 700. The online survey was sent out to 716 people in the building. I had a 29% response rate, which I'm not a quant researcher. I'm a quality researcher, and I've been told that I was disappointed with the response rate, but I was told that it was actually pretty good. So 29% of 716 people, and women also represented the 30% of the professionals. So the women in the organisation were all professionals. Yeah. So there was quite a few responses from all of that.
So you had 30% in the organisation were females.
Yeah.
How many of the total people that provided a response were females of the 30%?
That would have been, see, that was it was a while ago. I would have to get back to you. I would have to get back.
Oh, that's all right. I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think females are more willing to give feedback too. So if there's 30% in the organisation, but actually, 80% of that 30% were, joined in this survey, then
no, it was pretty representative. It was pretty balanced from memory. Women didn't swamp the responses. So yeah, it was interesting, but some of the responses, I was gobsmacked when I actually asked people who you're working with, the men, and they'd name Bob and Harry and Joe and Fred and Stephen, but I'd seen them working with Mary and June and Joan, because they were on the resourcing list. Virtually invisible. Don't even think about them.
Interesting.
Oh, sad.
So Nina's asked another question. Women apparently represent only a quarter of cyclists and of golfers. Is it realistic to expect young women to take up these hobbies in an effort to progress their careers?
Definitely not. Because women tend to have the bulk of care within their families. This is one of the big inequalities that I identified within the survey. This asking you whether you're interested in cycling was a bit of a tongue-in-cheek question I added here. It was probably just making those women who were into cycling a bit more aware of the connections that they could make if they wanted to join their fellow cyclists from work, because they talked, the men talked about, well, I hear about stock options, I hear about what's happening in business, whereas women talked about, I get together with my friends and we de-stress, and we bitch about office politics. So women and men get very different benefits from their connections. So it was a bit tongue-in-cheek. Sorry, Nina, I wasn't meaning that you should take up cycling. I was meaning that if you are into it, then take advantage.
Yeah, definitely. So we have 1 minute remaining. If anyone else has a question, please send it through. I've just got one from Marie. Marie asks, as a young professional, it can be difficult to know what exact skills you need to have. Do you think that we should include training in self-awareness and training of skills for how to present and express yourself to be heard by managers in university training? I have approached the university engineering department at Griffith, where I studied, and spoke with them about, what I could come along and just give one lesson on how engineers could help with their careers and give them an understanding of what it's like in the real world. And I haven't heard back. There's been crickets. It's been very disappointing, but I've been told by colleagues who've worked in diversity and equity for a long time that that's not uncommon. So yes, I do think that those sorts of subjects need to be included in your professional development studies within engineering. I think all the information that you can have to help you survive and thrive in your profession would be beneficial. My daughter is one of the statistics. She studied engineering. She was an engineer for 10 years and then left the profession because women are more likely than men to actually leave the profession to pursue those challenging and interesting work opportunities. And yeah, my daughter's one of those statistics. Now she teaches high school students, and she has developed the first engineering course for year 11s and 12s at Centenary High. So yeah, we need to keep you engaged, and we need to train you on how to be a professional engineer, I think. Yeah, it's interesting you say that. When I studied at UQ, the first thing that on the very first day of my engineering degree, the head of school gave an introduction to our whole cohort and asked, why are you here?
Yeah.
And people asked to learn how to, or people suggested, learning how to build bridges and things like that. But he just said, no, you're here to learn, and you know, and to learn for your lifetime, basically. So being resourceful, building your networks, and yeah, creating that nurturing environment so that your career can be built on all of that knowledge and information around you.
Yeah.
So we're out of time, I think, to continue questions. And I do want to throw it back to Karen, because
Hello, I just got a missed call from this number. It's Trang here from Oricon.
Hi, Trang.
Oh, hey, Trang. It's
so sorry,
Karen.
Throw it back to you now.
Yeah, that's all good. Thanks everyone for attending. I'll just present my screen real quick. Here we are. So yeah, thank you everyone for attending, and especially to Kim. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing all of your valuable research and insights. I for sure definitely learned a lot, and I hope everyone else did as well. And definitely great messages to pass on for myself, especially as someone who's very new to the industry, and I'm sure it's applicable to everyone at various different levels of experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
So again, thanks everyone for your continued participation. Just an FYI, if you are using today's participation to count for your continued professional development, just make sure you keep a copy of the confirmation email as proof of your attendance. And quickly, as mentioned at the beginning, this is the second session of 3 for our Women in Engineering Challenging Yourself Professional Development series. Our final one is going to be next week on the 30th of July from 12 to 1 p.m. And this time we'll be welcoming Paul Gleason and Matt Roscombe from Oricon to present the final workshop in the series. So Paul and Matt will be facilitating a panel discussion titled Looking Inside, Balancing Personal and Company Values. So for more information and to register, feel free to visit the website and register online, just like how you did for today's session. And just to wrap it up, thank you again very much to Dr. Ball for presenting, and thanks everyone for participating. Really hope to see you all again next week, and we hope you're enjoying these series. And if not, stay safe, especially during this time, and hope to see you again soon, and hopefully in person. What a dream that would be at our next alumni and industry event. So thank you everyone for attending.